I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Brad Formsma. Brad is going to talk to us about creating a culture of generosity. Brad, where are you? Come on up, Brad.
The book, I Like Giving, The Transforming Power of a Generous Life, is available in stores nationwide.
Get a book called I Like Giving. It's practical ideas by Brad Formsma.
When we started talking about doing a giving show, I thought we got to have Brad on because he's the giving guy.
When you move from awareness into action, miracles happen.
I always say I've never met an angry, bitter, generous person, so I want to be generous.
Last night I'm in Whole Foods, Fashion Island. It's the Indian Princess night for my daughter and I to bring the food. Homemade food, so we partnered with Whole Foods to get the macaroni and cheese, and we're in line, and Miss Impatience behind me, and the lady's ringing this stuff up, but there's a little bit of an issue looking up a code, and I swipe my card, pay the bill, and then I realize, oh, my two younger kids are having pizza in the cafe. We didn't pay for those 2 little pieces of cheese pizza, so I said, oh, hey, we got those 2 pieces of cheese pizza. And you could see Miss Impatient behind me, and I've been Mr. Impatient, so I get this roll the eyes like, are you kidding me? I mean, come on, I gotta go. And so I just said to the lady with the Halloween hangover hair, it's still orange. I'm hoping she can get it back to the way she wants it to be. Who's the cashier? I'm like, hey, just swipe that through. So she gets in on this, swipes it, and Miss Impatient, after rolling her eyes, she realizes what's happened, but it's too late. My card's already gone through a second time. And so she's like, you didn't buy me dinner. You didn't have to do that. Don't you love the things we say? Like, I knew I didn't have to buy you anything. And it changed the whole dynamic of that moment, all 3 of us. Because what happened? I experienced the joy of giving, but when we give and people observe that, they experience that joy as well. And the person that received it, she instantly went to, I run the Apple store. If you need something, come and see me or whatever, and I'll pay it forward. And I'm like, no, it's not pay it forward. I didn't give expecting you to do anything. Just take it in. It was a few years ago. I was standing in the corner, my grandfather's funeral, and I was observing how many people were at this funeral. And I realized that my grandpa had lived a generous life. He had modeled it to me over the years, didn't really talk that much about it with me. And a gentleman came up to me and he said, I need to tell you a story. He said, 3 years ago, my 43-year-old wife was sitting in the hospital. She passed away with a brain tumor and left me with 3 children. And so she was in the very place where your grandfather is in this casket right now. And when I came in to pay the bill, they said, oh, Mr. Roskam, your grandpa came in and paid it. And I looked over at my grandpa, and I thought, he's no longer with us, but his legacy continues. His generous life is still carrying on. And I was realizing how we all are going to leave some type of legacy. And we get to decide, because we're all in here living and breathing, what's that legacy going to look like? And I just encourage you to think about what kind of legacy you're leaving as it revolves and engages around giving. When I have a picture of a note that I found. My grandpa was one of these guys who would write little notes and put them away. And after he passed away, we were given these booklets of different notes that throughout our life he was writing to us. I was 14 years old when he wrote this, and it says, Dear Brad, Winston Churchill said we make a living by what we get, but a life by what we give. I thought this would be well worth remembering. And so I'm thinking, what a prophetic word from a Christian Reform guy, if that's possible. I mean, how amazing that he wrote that and put that on my life. And what a gift that I had to have him put that into my life. So a few years go by, and I was running a smaller business in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We had 25 people. It was a good business. I had it for 17 years, but it was frustrating me. Like, do I buy another business and add on to it? Do I go into a bunch of debt? Do I do more things that way? And I just couldn't get any peace around it. And so I'm out on a run, and I brought a picture of this because it really shows Michigan well. And that's a gravel road, but in Michigan we call it Natural Beauty Road because we're always looking for any way to kind of dress up the reality that it's not always that nice. And I'm running up that hill, and I'm crying out to God saying, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? And I get this strong impression, I'm going to use you to inspire people to give. And you're going to have an opportunity to bring greater hope and joy to many. And I'm thinking, what do you do with that? I don't even leave Michigan other than spring vacation. How could this possibly be? So I went home and journaled it and really prayed into it. As time went on, and got into the late 2000s, and it was Memorial Day weekend in Michigan. And I went down and I got the newspaper, and there's an article about a Sudanese father and son who had been firebombed out of their village, who had gone through so many horrific things, and they were now in a quadplex in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with clothes on their back and a few bikes. It's how the dad would get to work. And the article went on to say that some thugs had stolen their bikes. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, this is crazy. So I'm married to somebody different than me. How about any of you? Does that happen for you? So I'm the idea guy. So I come in and I'm like, we got a problem. And I'm a solution guy too, so what are we gonna do? But I learned a little something like, get the kids in on it, because it kind of, maybe they'll have the idea and then it's not me. So I read this article and my 10-year-old says, Dad, we gotta go get them bikes. I'm like, you're right. So we get in our minivan and we go and we load up the van with 2 bikes. So I have a 2-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old. We're going down the road and we realize, oh no, they didn't put the address in the newspaper. Like, what are we gonna do? So I call the church that's, taking care of these refugees, and the guy says, well, just give the bikes to Wheels for Jesus. And I'm like, no, I don't want to give the bikes to Wheels for Jesus. I want to model something to my kids like my grandpa did for me. So he finally gives us the information we need. 4 hours later, we find these people, Cheerios all over the back of the van, and when we get to them, all they can say is, I like bike, I like bike, I like bike, because the language barrier, that's it. Well, I just start telling the I like bike story, and over time, my friends start coming back to me with, like, I like Taco Bell. And I'm like, well, I don't. What are you talking about? And they're like, no, the I like bike story. And then I like cavities comes through. What do you mean you like cavities? Well, I was sitting at my dentist's office, and I overheard this single mom say, $926? My husband left me. Can I get payments? And he said, I just kept hearing I like bike in the back of my head. And so I got up and I went up to the cashier and I just said, hey, can you swipe this for her? And he said, the tears flowed for her. And he said, the joy he said, I give hundreds of thousands a year away. And he said, the joy that I experienced from connecting with another human being, closing the loop, meeting a need, not getting a tax deduction, it just brought me into what I think it means to be Jesus with skin on. And so we started to get more and more of these, and we thought, well, I'm a business guy, I guess we should do something about this. So we started to capture these short giving stories on film, started an organization called I Like Giving, and then said, well, if you have a name like I Like Giving, that could be a problem for if you really want to get to the heart, which is what we're all about, people are going to think we're a fundraiser. So we said, well, we're going to pray that people will ask us how they could help us, and we're going to believe that we're going to be a small group of investors that help us do great things. And so that's how we started on the That's our model. So what we do is we come alongside organizations that are even in the generosity space, or churches or business, and that way. So I'd like to show you a little video that overviews I Like Giving.
Everything is about us. Devices memorize our personal preferences. Websites tell our friends what we had for breakfast. And billion-dollar campaigns tell us how we can be happier. But we're not. We want to live a life dedicated to something greater than our personal satisfactions. We want our actions to live beyond us. And they can. It starts by stopping. Stop and listen. Stop and see. Who is around you? What do they need? How can you help? When you decide to respond, it opens a whole new world of possibility. A generous world is actually a better world for all of us. This is why I Like Giving started. It's a nonprofit that was created to inspire a more generous world. And this generosity goes way beyond money. It's about time, words, ideas, clothes, food, wisdom, love, and most importantly, action. I Like Giving tells stories of people who are making their world a little bit bigger and a little bit brighter by giving. So go check out a story today, and then go create your own. And the next time you're thinking about what you can get, try thinking about what you can give and see what happens.
So today we've had over 30 million people interact with our stories. So what's fun is what that is meant for our investors is that for every 100,000 that has come into us, over 2 million people have been interacting with one of our stories. And we just did some research because for so long I decided I don't want to have the numbers. I don't want to do what everybody else does. But finally one of our friends was like, but this is producing a lot of fruit. You have to tell people this. And so what we realized is going out in the survey side was that over 90% of the people that watched one of our stories, it caused them to act. Now, when I say act, we talk about generosity at I Like Giving in a broad sense. So I can be generous with my words towards someone. I can be generous with how I think of another person. I can be generous with the things I share, with my time, my relationships, my influence, and of course, money. So we want to bring people into this thinking of this lifestyle of generosity, that it's all encompassing. And so we're excited about that. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like starting out just capturing stories and inspiring people to the world. That's great. But then we started having pastors come to us and say, help us talk about the thing we don't like to talk about. We don't talk about. And if we do, we kind of sometimes don't get it right. So we responded by creating a division of I Like Giving that works specifically with churches. And we want to help. We want to come along and use the power of story to help them activate givers at all levels. The other day I met Donald Bren. It was a fascinating conversation, albeit brief, because I thought he's richer than me. But then what I realized, he's the Irvine chairman. I guess I've only been here a year, but most people know the name. And so the interesting part about it was, I thought, we all can play in this generosity space. It's not just for the person that has tremendous wealth. My kids can give, and that matters as well. And so what happens when we start to activate kids at a young level in church and in school and beyond? So how do we respond on the business side? Well, we've had large corporations and some medium-sized companies come to us and say, we read your book, we're learning about this culture of generosity, help us bring it into our organization. And so most of our films, like the one that you see today, are used in a way to inspire action inside of an organization, and just really walking with senior management of a corporation to say, what does it look like to think and use stories? What does it look like to help people think about giving in the marketplace? And so those are some of that's the work of I Like Giving today. And I'd like to show you one of our films. It's a classic, but I thought it would be perfect. Maybe some of you have already seen this, but we really would like you to take this one in. It's called I Like Car.
I had an accident and my hip was broken in so many pieces. I have 2 rods in my hip.
She's an angel among us. If you watch her in the bread company, everyone comes in to see Catherine.
We sell the bread, but I feel like there are some people who specifically come with prayer requests, and I go pray for them.
One day when we were sharing, she said she was in need of a different car, that her car was needing expensive repairs.
I had been saving money, but I knew it wasn't enough, so I knew I would take a few years to save for it.
So a couple months later, I went in and I said, Catherine, how's your car fund coming? And she said, I gave it all away. And I looked at her and she said there was a widow in need, and I gave her the $5,000.
I struggled a lot when I gave that money. And I said, I feel okay, but do you think I did the right thing? I mean, I cannot give what I don't have, so I just gave what I had.
I was shocked, and so I come home and I tell Pete that we needed to help Catherine with her car fund. He looked at me and he said, no, I think we need to buy Catherine a car. And I said, okay, great. Pete called Scott and said, do you know Catherine at Great Harvest? And he said, yes, he did. Pete said, well, we'd like to buy her a car. He asked Pete, do you want a used or new car? And it just hit him right in the face. Why would he ask me that? Of course I would want a used car. That's good enough. He just paused for a moment and he said, I want a new car. And he said it was silent on the phone for a few seconds. And Scott said, whoa, I want to help. And so he pitched in some.
So she came to the bakery and she asked me, if you were to buy a car, what kind of a car would you like? I said, Debbie, I'm not really planning to buy a car. But she said, oh, just tell me.
And she said, I'd like a SUV, cruise control, and she said, I'd like a light color. And we called Scott, and he said, I think I've got the perfect car. So Pete said, can we deliver it tomorrow? So we have the bread company owner and his family, Scott and his family, and our family. And Catherine sees us all coming in, and she's just all excited to see everyone.
And I went to give them hugs, and I said, what's Pete doing here? I didn't have the biggest idea. When I went out,
and so we walked her over to the car. We said, Catherine, this is your new car.
so I said, for me? This is for me? I said, well, I knew God had many cars, but I didn't know He had a new one for me. So God had new cars for me?
We all stood there in tears as we saw the joy on Catherine's face. And we got to be a part of it. And the joy of that was unbelievable.
So right, but it was such an excitement to drive it.
We told Catherine that we would like this to be confidential. But I kept running into people who would say, I heard what you did for Catherine. It wasn't even us, it was Catherine. It all started with Catherine giving of what she had to a widow to help her, and it just continues on. Generosity begets generosity.
We don't give in order to receive. We give because it's the nature of Jesus Christ. He gave us his life. So we have the DNA of Jesus Christ of giving. Yeah, so this is one story I will never forget in my life.
We have the DNA of Jesus on giving. Love that line. Love that line. So you say, well, what do I do now? I'm not going to give a car today, but what would that look like? We hope that you'd experience the joy of giving soon. And maybe it's been a while since you've experienced that. We're really big on this idea that what in your heart are you purposing to do? You know, he says, we don't want you to give out of duty or obligation. We want you to give out of what you purpose in your heart. And out of that, what's going to happen? A cheerful giver is going to come out of that. And I love a cheerful giver. And so our hope is that you would be able to experience that joy. I wrote a book that is full of stories like the one that you just watched. And on page 34, I have this short prayer. And I'd like to pray it with us, with you, as I wrap up this time. It says, Lord, I want to experience the joy that comes from giving. I ask that today an opportunity to give will come my way, that I'll recognize it when it does, and that I'll have the courage to jump in and give. Amen. The second thing that I wanted to do is, in closing, was introduce our team. I mentioned earlier that the person that's working on our church side is John Ramsey, who's over at this table here. Some of you may know John. And then on the corporate side and the business side, Elizabeth Gegner in the center table. And so if you have questions about how we could help you in those respective areas, we'd love to do that. So thank you again for this time.
Brad's books are back there if you'd like to buy some. They're 2 for $20. Interestingly enough, they're 4 for $40. And you can actually get 10 for $100. And Christmas is coming up. What better gift than to give somebody an I Like Giving book? All right. Take a look at page 25, and that's what you want to fill out if you'd like to have Brad come out and maybe speak to your corporation or your church and start that generosity. Let's go ahead and pray for Brad and his ministry. Father, I just thank you for Brad and for his message. I think all of us are challenged, Lord. Each day you put so many opportunities in front of us, Lord, to be generous with the small things we have, not just our money, but our time, our expertise. Maybe it's even a smile. Father, you modeled it for us by coming down and dying for us. So I would just pray that each person here today might experience a little bit of generosity in the next 24 hours. Lift this up to you in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.